Welcome to the Vigor Life Podcast, a source of inspiration, lessons, stories, skill sets, mindsets, and strategies to invigorate and expand all areas of your life. Let's go. What is going on? We are back with the Vigor Life Podcast with my man Cody, Boom McBroom.
What is good?
And today we're back. We're back to essentially coaching. We're doing coaching. We're going to talk about some concepts and strategies. We're going to answer some Q&A. Some questions from last time, and we also got some new ones. And these ones we can kind of dig deep into. But I'm going to start it off with something that keeps coming up, and so I wanted to address it. And what's really cool is that some of the stuff that I'll be talking about in as far as it comes to like nutrition coaching and also like training, how you can draw parallels in just about anything. So a lot of the coaching concepts that I'm going to go over and we're going to go over, you could literally draw a parallel line to, any other area of life. I mean, obviously, we get a lot of business stuff. Like one of the next podcasts, I'm going to go over some stuff that I'm going to learn in my insights from the 212 event, which I'm going out to this coming weekend. But that's what's so dope is, when you look at this stuff, and obviously, you're doing a lot of business now and your online coaching, but you can see how limiting factors in nutrition, you can take it right across and go like, okay, what's not working here in my business, right? And, with that said, multiple people this week said to me, and it's like in some form of another, well, my situation is special. So this is why it brought me to say that, the special scenarios, and this is actually a note that I have, aren't really that special. They're just everyday, real life examples of human diversity. And let me say, like, what I mean with the special scenarios. Like, the people start thinking that they're different. And look, you're very unique. But when it comes to nutrition, in the vast majority of situations, I'm not going to say some random number, 98%, whatever. Right. But I mean, same thing. You probably deal with it. How many people have to see, because I don't recommend you try to solve, I would say, medicine issues with nutrition, right? Like that's not our realm. And, don't try to be too smart and try to solve medical problems with, nutritional advice, unless you are, I would say, like that is your realm and you have studied that and you're, you can do those things. So, but in the vast majority of situations, the people that we see, I would say that their body composition and health and performance can be improved with lifestyle and nutritional changes.
Oh, 100%. And honestly, a lot of those medical issues probably can too.
Yes.
Even stuff with like, for instance, my eczema.
Yep.
Like I haven't had it in months now because I just simply removed specific things out of my diet. Poof, it's gone. So now I don't have to use all these lotions and all this shit that I was buying.
I agree. I agree. Like but for instance, right? Like, if you like do the things that like are not outside of your realm and you're like, okay, well, let's start fixing these foundational things. This is great because it's a perfect leeway into what I was going to say. A lot of these problems are usually going to go away.
Oh, 100%.
And, sometimes they don't. Obviously, that's like just means digging deeper and maybe, referring out. But in majority of situations, they do. And this is where kind of like that whole special situations, right? That clients can get distracted with special scenarios. And it's like the trap of like a mowing the lawn while the house is on fire. And perfect. So I walk into, so this is a great one, right? And I don't want to like be crazy judgmental on it, but somebody walks into Super Subs yesterday and, the first question is like, hey, where are the joint pills? And it's like, the person at Super Subs is like, well, what are you looking for? Oh, it's the pills that are going to make my joints feel better. I mean, like literally this is the sentence that's coming out. And, this person is quite overweight. I'd even say obese. And so my question, and once again, like there's obviously judgment here because I don't know, I don't know everything that's behind it. But with, what we've seen and the thousands of clients that we've trained, this is kind of like that special scenario where you're going to get a pill to help improve your joint pain, where it's exercise and joint mobility drills and
anti-inflammatory
food and obviously losing weight so that there's less stress on the joints is the solution. but it's like, but you're going to the store because you're looking for that magic pill.
Right.
And it's, same scenario as, for instance, worrying about a single supplement, like vitamin supplement, when your overall eating pattern is chaos, or glycemic index of like a carrot, when you're snacking late at night, right? It's kind of like you're really worried about this special scenario thing, but these fundamentals are just like completely out of whack.
Well, and I think that's why like the paleo movement, like people who are in that are so like gung ho, because they've seen drastic changes in their life because of it, from all these different things, right?
Yep.
And they try to, and this is where we kind of like set our boundaries. They try to prescribe things through food because you can get away. But at the end of the day, it's somewhat true. Like doctors and all these medical professionals are prescribing these pills, but they don't even supplement nutrition and proper training and stuff like that. And there's that huge gap. And like you said, it's like mopping the floor when the ceiling's leaking. Yeah. If an athlete hurts their ankle and then they brace it up and they lose all mobility in it, they're going to end up hurting it again because they're not moving it, not getting any range of motion. So 90% of the time, you can literally fix all these issues by just changing your diet.
Like foundational things.
Yeah.
And there's no better quote here than like, food being nature's medicine cabinet, right?
Yeah.
And so to go back, because all the people that are the best, like if you start looking at, our clients or the people that, I don't know, in your life that you look up to and you go like, man, that person's really healthy, they're lean, right? What you'll notice is they're like really, really good at the fundamentals.
Yeah.
Right? It's not, Gene had a great question last time, which we'll bring up about like, the diets and keto and like, why do they become mainstream and so popular? And, and I think this is going to loop back in to be able to talk about that. But, you'll notice that people are just really good at fundamental things. Yeah. And here's like to reaffirm what are some of the fundamental things that, are kind of like these base habits that we teach. And, eating slowly, eating to 80% full, which are very, very kind of closely interrelated.
That's my biggest issue.
Yeah. I mean, and once again, like, if this was coaching, it wouldn't be in this order. It would be like any of these, right? We're talking a little bit about,
right,
what's the best behavior to start? Well, it's the one that depends on the person and the client and what they choose. But you got eating lean protein with every meal. And we talk about that, all the time. Eating 5 servings of veggies and fruits every day. Smarter carb choices, I would say. Eating healthy fats. Preparing your meals, a huge one. One that's a big mover right there. Recording your intake, so tracking in some way or another. Whether it's journaling. Create, sleep rituals. I know that doesn't touch necessarily on nutrition, but it's such a huge factor here too. Drinking calorie-free beverages. Eating whole foods. Protein, colorful veggies every meal, 80, 20, 90, 10. Like these are like these big movers. And then they have a ton of different kind of like subcategories and strategies that we could go over. But, whenever you start catching yourself being like, well, but, I have this special scenario. I would always say like, man, until you're not mastering the fundamentals, that special scenario most of the time, if you have like really improved your fundamentals, and those things are still flaring up, that's kind of like when you start digging deeper, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think like Jason Phillips said something. He said he teaches his people to focus on protein and produce. So if you look at it like that, like if you solely focus on just getting 90% of your diet is just protein and produce, right? You're eating lean meats, you're eating hopefully grass-fed, like real good dairy. You're eating tons of veggies and fruits and root vegetables. Your oils and fats are coming from the ground at some point. If not, they're from an animal. If you do that, you really only end up eating to 80% full because it's very hard to eat overeat real food as far as calories go. You're going to stay more full. Your metabolism is going to be healthy. Your hormones are going to be healthy. Your joints are going to feel better. Like that one thing can solve so many issues if people just let it be so simple, right? Yep. I think people just don't want to. The people that are successful, like we're talking about, are the people that are okay with it being extremely simple. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that.
And I think that comes back to the whole, why do we make things complex? And you know what? I'm actually gonna go to this question right now because I just think it parallels,
right? Like you said, like there's plenty of other areas in my life that I complicate the hell out of
stuff. Yeah,
and it overwhelms me, right? In nutrition, I've been able to develop that, but it's funny how everything, like you said, it's always a parallel. Like if you can look at this and go, how can I apply that to another area of my life, or how does this apply, or how does this reflect on another area? You will be so unbelievably surprised how many insights you have. It's insane.
Because, and like I said, maybe fitness and nutrition is, I would say, easier for us because we've been doing it for a long time, building those skill sets. Yep. But you go to the parallel, and we get these questions all the time, like the marketing thing, and it's like, well, get better at the basics. Are you communicating every day? Are you emailing multiple times a week and putting stuff on social media and creating value for the marketplace? And it's the same thing, but when a person doesn't do it, they try to find a complex solution because they think it's going to speed stuff up. You know, so that and I would say that's the business special scenario. Right? Let's just call it that. Yeah. Well, but like video's killing right now, so I need to like get the most elaborate video ad of all time, and it's like, man, listen, you're not even putting out like basic 1 minute Instagram videos to create value, but you want to jump the gun and spend $10,000 on video production.
I was guilty to that.
Which you should with Gene. That's just a little commercial in there, bro. But to that question actually, because it fits in really nice, right? With Gene asked this last week, with new diets, why do new diets become so popular? Is it because of mainstream social media, news? How do you help clients block out popular fads and stick to the basics? I would say number one is educate. Educate and create awareness, because most people that kind of go through this reoccurring loop of diets, it hasn't worked in the past, right? Well, I tried XYZ when it came out and I had some results and then it fell off, right? Because none of them were sustainable. And I don't think any of them are bad. Same thing. We don't really fall in line with any kind of camp when it comes to diets, whether it's keto, whether it's paleo, whether it's, zone, I don't give a shit what it is. Like the reality is like what is going to work for the person. And, if you don't give it a label, you actually see that a lot of these diets have quite a lot of commonalities. Yeah. Right. They actually do, like majority of these diets, like, recommend whole unprocessed foods. You know what I mean? They recommend having protein. There's all these like quality things that they recommend. And to be honest, like if you just took the label off, if you didn't call paleo and you were like, well, here's some rules, right? And if you, took the label off of keto or whatever, right? Same thing. Here's some rules. You notice that there's things that like crossover, and it's just like Eric Cressy was saying, like, hey, look at, the strength coaches in the industry and notice that like, what are all the things that people are doing the same? And that's going to be like the top guys going to be doing 80 to 90% the same. And like, those are the things you should learn from. Right. You know what I mean? Like those are the things that work.
And how somebody coaches it is going to relate to a specific person. And that's what kind of sucks them in. And it's just like if we look at sales, like we want to put out the benefits versus the features, right? So all these diets do the same thing. They're going to shout out all these benefits, but if you look at the other ones, a lot of the benefits are all correlated. Yeah. And I try to relay the message that essentially it's always a way to get you to consider being healthier and eating less calories. Mm-hmm. That's every single diet, right? And there's even this new one I heard somebody talking about. It's called like the 5x5 diet. Have you heard of that? No. It's like 5 meals a day and each meal has 5 or less ingredients. You can't do that without eating real foods because most processed foods have a shit ton of crazy stuff on the label. So there's no restrictions on calories or anything, but you end up eliminating all these high calorie processed foods. You're going to end up eating less calories. You're going to end up eating healthier. Of course, you're going to lose weight and feel better. Like all
it really is, essentially, you're just creating a different framework, like 100%. The 5x5. We just create a different framework, right?
It's catchy. It makes sense. Somebody hooks onto it because Jessica Alba represented it or something like that, and then they.
I got to get on that now.
You know what I'm saying? And then people dive on it though. But that's.
And by the way, I saw her eating pasta at the restaurant we were at like not long ago. I don't know if that had only 5 ingredients,
it definitely didn't. It is not on the 5x5.
She can do that though. She can do 5x9. But the thing is, like, if you put if you put a big piece of paper on her and then just started writing down all these different habits and tactics and strategies, and you just went to people and said, hey, pick one. Which one seems the most common sense or easiest for you to do, or maybe the one that you feel like you need to change the most, and they picked it and they just started doing it. Yeah. Right. At the end, it doesn't matter what you'd call it. You know what I mean? Like it legitimately wouldn't. That's why I love the PM principle, like even the fundamentals that I called out, because most of these actually like will fall under most diets. Yeah. Except for the dumb ones like the fucking cookie diet and stuff like that. Right. But
is that a real thing?
That's a real thing. Yeah, there's like I forgot. It's like I think it's like in the tens of thousands of diets, right? And you know how it is, like people just, you had that whole, calories are the only thing that matters. So fucking you can eat ice cream. It's like, not necessarily.
Well, dude, they're doing a lot of studies that are going to backlash that whole efficient macros.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And my whole thing is if I can lay out, like a lot of people want to attach themselves to a title. So if I lay out 5 quote unquote fad diets that I know are safe, I'm going to lay them out and let them pick. And if that makes them more sustainable with it and they still get the result and they're healthy and they're happy, then cool. Rather than me going, like I think this diet's going to be best for you and then them rebelling against it.
Yeah.
So I think to an extent that's fine. If we can preach the message of like precision nutrition, just basic produce and protein style eating, I always think that's the best way to go. And if you track calories and macros, that should still be the fundamental principle behind it. Intermittent fasting, same thing. Like you should be focused on that above all else.
And you made a great point where like people have to make a choice. There's still I can't tell you how much of this I see, and it's crazy because I'm seeing it in coaching is coaching, and I see it in a lot of the business realm too. But people people not making a choice, and coaches not actually coaching. Because I don't even fucking think it's coaching, right? It's like I think it's the guru style, like I'm the guru, I'm gonna tell you what to do, right? But when people don't make the choice, there's no autonomy, and automatically there's some subconscious like rejection behind it. Yeah. So asking it, like I have some dope ass examples here.
And I think like to go off that real quick, like I think a great coach, their main job is just asking questions and getting the person to answer, right? Like it almost like frustrated me when I started like business coaching with somebody and I'm like, no, dude, like you're supposed to tell me what the fuck to do. They're like, well, why is this? Why did this? What do you think about that? And I'm like, the fuck are you asking me questions for? But then I found the answer, and that's where the learning process grows, right? And I've grown so much more because of that rather than someone just telling me the answer.
And I would say there's a fine line because, questions are important, but it might be something like, hey, Cody, what do you think? What do you think? Like, I have some ideas I'd like to share with you, but let me ask you first. What do you think are some things you should do?
100%. Especially with nutrition and training.
Absolutely. Because it's like, here's what some of our clients did and had success with. Yeah. Right. But first, let me ask you what you think, you should be, or what are some steps do you think would help you out? Right. Because one, like I said, this is collaborative. Like it's, there's coactive coaching involved. You get insight on the person, because let's be real, no matter how good you are as far as like intuition goes and reading people and, kind of recognizing patterns, there's no, like the more questions you ask and the deeper that you go, like the more you actually start seeing what makes people tick. Yeah. What their life is really like. You kind of start, learning to read in between the lines and so on and so. And the thing is, the more buy-in there is that person starts sharing more because let's be real. At the beginning, you might not hear everything. Yeah. It's like when we had Dan in for the FMS, right? And it's a perfect example. Like the FMS, the movement screen, doing an assessment. You kind of get this when at the beginning they fill out the health and history form, and it's like, did you have any serious injuries? And it's like, there's nothing, and then all of a sudden you start going, and it's like, hey, what's going on here? Like this shoulder doesn't really flex overhead. Oh man, I forgot 6 years ago I completely like tore it. I had a reconstructive surgery on it. Right? And you're like, you didn't feel like that would be something important to mention. I completely forgot about it, right? And sometimes it's forgetting. Sometimes it's there's shame and blame behind sharing.
Or they don't want to be left out of anything.
Absolutely. Yeah. So there's a lot of different stuff that, and with nutrition, I think it's even more so. One, people don't recognize their own patterns. Sometimes it's the shame of, oh man, like this is how I eat and this is what I do. And this is how I do it. So there has to be enough like rapport and care and empathy and like really listening so that people are like, I'm comfortable with sharing these things because this person's really here to help me. Yeah. So all of a sudden now we're digging deeper again because, how much does it matter that people care, that people listen, that you ask questions, and not just once, hey, it's keto, it's this, it's that, it's whatever, you know what I mean?
And I think that attitude right there, and this is a bold statement, but I think that's why, like at Vigor, like all of us, we have the least likelihood of people like coach hopping, I guess, if that's a thing, right? How many people do we get that are like, oh, like I was working with so-and-so and then I started working with so-and-so and then like I felt like this, so I just didn't do anything and then I started working with this person and now they're finally resorting here and then they're here for years, right? So it's like trying to meet them where they're at and actually give them a solution that they can follow and adhere to is so powerful. But
Yeah,
you got to
because
do this communication, the questioning, all that stuff that you're talking about.
Because that's the foundation. And like, I mean, I remember, working at bigger gyms, and it was just like, I'd get a coaching client from someone else, and it's like, well, but they said this, but then that guy said that, and it's all over the place. And all it really does is, a lot of times that whole buy-in goes down, right? You get more confusion. You get, I would say, people really start questioning it more. They start, kind of feeling the threat.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I know this is kind of going left field a little bit, but at the same time, like, why I never wanted to just come in and be an independent contractor, right? It's like we have to have the same kind of like principles and vision of what we're coaching and teaching and believing. Right. So that it's like it's unity. It's one unit, right? It's like, well, I know if I go ask Cody this, if I go ask Luca this, if I go ask Theo or Rach or Justin, like they're gonna basically in the big picture is always gonna be the same.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that's super, super key. Because when you go to you go to different gurus and like, well, one guru said this and the other guru said that, right? Like, but when you come from a base of like asking questions and understanding someone more, the person a lot of times kind of reveals their own answers. Yep. Right. And man, so this is something, I think I brought this up in one of the podcasts, but can be very, very parallel in coaching. It's the questions of, number one is like, what do I want to do, right? So, and most people that come here is like, I want to lose body fat and like feel healthier, and right? You fill in the blank, and then you got the four. Well, put it this way: there's multiple behaviors, right? That are going to consist of that, right? So, but let's say, whatever. Let's say there's three, but there's four questions you ask, right? What does it involve? So it might be like, I want to get in shape. Okay, it involves somebody comes and sees you. Like the guy that just started strength camp, right? What does it involve? Well, strength camp is twice a week, and it would be good if you could do, 2 team training sessions a week, right? So it's like, that's what it involves. Why does it matter? It's like, well, he wants to put on some muscle, right? When you train and you break down muscle and you eat right, like you're gonna build muscle up, right? Number 3 is how will I know that I've done it? Well, I mean, it's pretty simple for us, because it's like you got to show up. There's accountability. It's like, well, man, like the coach is going to know that you showed up. Like Zen Planner is going to show that know that you showed up. And number 4 is like, what tells me it's time to move on. And that might be like, well, it's a 12-week program, or hey, the first month, do 3 training sessions and we'll reassess. But after 4 weeks, if you were 90% compliant with your training sessions, maybe we bump you up to do the mobility drills on Wednesday or whatever it may be. Right. And so like I just did an example of the behavior being lifting weights, right? But then what could be behavior 2 is, adding protein to every meal. Well, why is that important? Well, because we need protein to build muscle, right? And so that's why I'm like such a big fan of like these, notice how like there's such basic things, but they open up your eyes to, what you are or not doing. Yeah. Right. And it's the whole thing between like the outcome versus behavior goal, right? Like step 1 for any client is like show how behaviors get them to their outcomes. Cause like, man, you can't, you can't control fat cells and hormones and that, like directly. I mean, obviously you can with your behaviors, right? But like nobody can tell you, I still think that this is a really, really tough one, but I know if you've heard this, right? It's like, well, if we do everything right, you can lose up to 2 pounds of fat a week. Yeah. Right. But for real, like how do you, and how in the fucking world do you know that person is going to do that, even if they do everything right? You can't. Like you just cannot, right?
The odds might be that 1 to 2 pounds, assuming you do everything right.
It may be more, of course, too, because of like the water retention and you drop in that. But that, because it brings me up to a scenario where like, Justin Wong, like there was a client where, for instance, I thought, man, like really good results, right? But they go like, oh man, I don't know about my results. And it's like, I was like 12 or 13 pounds of fat, of weight loss. Plus I know like in this time frame, like the muscle mass is going up, the weight, like the lifts have gone up and everything. And like, I don't know, like 8 weeks. I'm like, man, that's fantastic. Yeah. Right. But it's like, there's no, and I think the conversation around expectation has to be there too, where, it's like, well, asking a person what they're expecting.
Yeah.
Like
what were they actually looking for?
Yeah. What do you believe, is the goal that you want to achieve? Because if somebody, I mean, let's be real. Like somebody comes to you and says, well, look, Cody, I want to lose 30 pounds in 3 months. Right. And it's like, well, we can't necessarily influence that, but let's look at the behaviors that'll get you there.
Right.
And also not just that, like I'm a big fan of going like, okay, for this goal, like it's going to take more, like more training with me. It's going to take, more compliance in nutrition. You're going to have to be like 90% compliant for this goal.
Yeah.
Right. So it's going to be more challenging, right? Are you willing or are you able? Like, so it's the ready, willing, and able, are you ready, willing, and able to do this? And a lot of times you find out that that's not the case. Yeah. Right. But it's like, well, we can go this route. Now it might take longer to get there, but we'll get there. Yeah. Right. And giving people the choice, right? The choice is like, man, we can go gung ho, but this is what this is going to take. Yeah. And that's going to be harder to maintain. And like, just giving them the reality check of it.
Well, and I think everything's an assessment, right? And people are too quick to jump the gun. And we're talking about Dan doing the FMS. I mean, all that is like, I come in and he's like, okay, Cody, you're fit, you're in shape. I'm like, yeah, I'm cool. Let's do assessment. I got messed up this. I got to work on this, right? So it's the same thing with nutrition. When someone comes to me and they say they want to lose X amount of weight, instead of me going, yeah, we can lose 2 pounds a week, let's just get it. Like I have to assess everything. And then if assuming they do everything, they don't lose that, it's another assessment. Like, okay, why aren't they doing that? Mm-hmm. What else do we have to change? What are they not telling me? What other behavior or environmental habits do they have, whether it's stress or hormonal or whatever it may be? And I think not enough people are willing to stop, slow down, and assess. Yep. Like everything. Because it happens in everything.
Man. I keep getting back 100%. To it. This is a great drill for anyone. So it's like if you're a coach or like I said, if you're somebody, wanting to make a change, want, willing, won't, like basically I just call it ABC, but like, want, willing, won't questions, because, you think about like everything we're talking about, like this is a really foundational question that most people don't like even address, but it's so important because here you might find out like, why are we even going this route when you're not, willing to do this? Yeah. So it's really simple. You ask yourself, what do you want? Or and if I was asking myself, like, what do I want, right? But if you're a coach and you're asking a client, like, what do you want, right? What's the end goal? Why do you want, what do you want to achieve? Why do you want to achieve it? Number 2 is, what are you willing to do to get that right now, right? What are you willing to do to get that right now? And number 3 is like, what won't you do for that goal right now? And, remember, like that's important because it kind of brings up like, well, what are some things that you want to do? Yeah. And like 2 examples.
Or won't give up.
Or not give up at this point in time.
Right.
And so it's like really an ABC list, right? Like, for instance, for foods, what are the food, like this is such an important one. Like, what are the foods you like and love, right? Just write a list out. You know what I mean? What are some foods that you might eat? Like, you're like, all right, cool. I don't dislike them. But then there's like, not right now. There's no fucking way I'm touching it, right? Right. Make that list. So like, man, you're not going to address the not right now list. So you might be able to dabble in that maybe, but you're going to pick everything off the like. Right. But it's the same thing with training. It's like, what can you easily do, right? What is a maybe sort of, and then what's not right now. But for instance, there's people that might go like, I'm not sprinting right now, right? There's no way, okay? Or, you know what, like, man, and this is a perfect example of that conversation I had, when I was like, there was a person that was like, I can't do lifting weights right now. And the thing is, who am I to say, well, but you should, but they're like, no, but not right now. I don't want to. So now if I had this list, now we can start creating a plan around, you know what? I'll do Zumba twice a week. I like Zumba. Cool. Let's do that. Yeah. You know what I mean? But if you don't start here, imagine that now you're prescribing all this stuff and moving around and like in their head, like they might be like, okay, well, this is a coach, so he's telling me this stuff.
But it's constant threat.
Exactly. Yeah. It's constant threat, So imagine like how like different questions and methods can completely eliminate, certain paths that person doesn't want to go down and give them the choice of like, where do they want to go?
If you just ask that and just listen, man, it's just like, it's so simple, but it's so true. Because if somebody approaches me and I say, oh, well, my program's 5 days a week, you got to eat this style of diet with this exact name, right? It's automatic red flags, right? And I would even assume, even if somebody was willing to do 5 days a week and the way I approach it is automatically going to put threat up anyway, because I'm barking orders at them, right? Like,
absolutely. Once again, not their choice.
Exactly.
Right? Not their choice. And And that's why, the good thing about it is that, like, with so much online things going on, that people can choose, right? Like, I'm definitely not doing that. Like, that's too much, right? That looks more kind of like a go-to for me, or why you have people that are like, man, I just want to do body weight stuff. Yeah. And then, down the line, they get fitter, they progress, and then they start doing other stuff, right? But it's important.
And I've had that plenty of times where people don't even want to go to a gym at first, right? And they want to start in their room or their garage, and then they order like bands and like mini kettlebells from Amazon. And I'm like, cool, whatever you want to do, I'll make it around you.
Shit, like the thing is that I still think the majority of, marketing and fitness is still like marketing to fit people to get fitter. Yeah. And I see, I don't like, here's the thing. I don't see a problem with it when that's your goal, right? Yeah. When you're like, hey, look, this is our niche. This is who we are. And this is who we're going to market to, or who we're going to communicate with, right?
I don't think anybody can start there though.
Start
at like that point, right? Like I feel like you have to start by helping people just get fit, period, before you can help fit people get fitter. Oh, does that make sense?
And on the other side of things, I think sometimes it really is, because everybody that you talk to, what do they, it's like Fit Pro is like, man, I just want to help people, right? But the reality is like I do, it's like I want to help anyone. Like, so if you got the athlete that, man, is really motivated, like I still want to help him get to the next level. But let's be real about who needs help more.
Exactly.
Right? It's somebody that's, like I said, that's really struggling, like it's low self-esteem, and it's like it's tough to break through that barrier. Yeah. And I think that a lot of marketing, and I'll say that, like, even on our end, like my goal is to really work harder and change that. I know that there's certain things that we've done in the past where I'm like, man, you talk to people and they're like, oh man, like I heard you guys are awesome, but I don't know if that's for me, and it's scary. And so obviously there was a community.
I'm not at that level yet.
At that level, you've heard this one, right? Like it's like, I'll see you when I get in better shape. And so
like we help you get to that point
for sure. And it's like, at first I judge it, like, man, that's such a dumb thing to say. Yeah. But at the same time, it's like they say that because of like I said, there's a threat and there's a picture of what it takes to train here. Mm-hmm. And so I rather point to myself and go like, well, how can we communicate this better? Or how can we make people more comfortable about seeing that like this is for anybody, right? And we have like every walk of life. And so, instead of pointing fingers and like doing the blame thing, you go, how do we solve that? Right? Yeah. How do we communicate better so that people understand?
I wish there was more, whether it's in the industry or just being said, like I know we do a pretty good job, and some of the people we follow do, of like just discussing the stories that people have in their head. Because a lot of times that story has nothing to do with anybody here, because nobody thinks that way here. It's really just a projection that they have in their own head. Mm-hmm. And I know I did that a lot with business, like even with Warrior and stuff like that. I was like, I'm not ready yet. Like my business isn't successful enough. I'm too young. And then it's really just a story in my head. Half the people don't even know that I'm the age I am, right? So like,
because of your luscious beard, but
it's got to be that, bro. It's got to be that. It adds like 3 years, but I think the biggest the biggest thing for me was getting over those stories, right? Mm-hmm. Learning how to go through processes to eliminate them and stop projecting that story onto other people, because nobody gave a fuck.
I mean, here, the crazy thing about stories is that, like, I would say that thoughts, you think a thought long enough, it becomes a story. Yeah. You tell yourself a story long enough, it becomes a belief, mm-hmm. And then that belief starts guiding you. And, and like I said, how many people are like, oh, I'm not ready, or I can't do it, or I failed 10 times. So like, it's just not meant to be, or it's my genetics, or it's, whatever. And this is another one of those kind of like scenarios where I start going towards, that takes some time to change, right? I mean, you gotta feed your, your brain and your environment, like different stories, or like.
It's hard to do that too, though. You know what I mean? Like to break out that. It's funny. Like the other day, Steve said this little tiny story. It was so funny. It was like the Rottweiler and the duck. Uh-huh. So this little Rottweiler was a little puppy, got abandoned, and he was looking for a new family, and he found a bunch of ducks. So he started living with the ducks, eating with the ducks, swimming with the ducks, sleeping with the ducks, until one morning he woke up and he just ate the fucking ducks because he realized he was a Rottweiler. So it's the same thing. Like you're just following down this path that is not your path, right? But it comes down to changing the story and like who you really are and what you really need.
And I mean, I'm just such a big believer in like environments, right? I mean, it's gonna keep coming back to that. Like, put yourself in an environment where like people start breaking down your story compassionately, not like in a way where they care about you, but they also like call you out and be like, man, like who the fuck says you can't do that? You know,
right.
Like look at what you just did. And I think it's like, kind of like the whole positive regard that we talk about is like when you constantly bring people's wins up. I'm like, man, did you notice like you just lifted 40 pounds more? Hey, did you notice that like, or somebody's like, man, I've been on a diet 10 times and, I keep falling off. And instead of going like, oh man, that sucks. You go like, man, you've got on diet 10 times and you're here again.
Yeah,
man, like you have resilience. That's amazing. Like I wish I would have your resilience. And then that person goes like, shit, never thought about it like that, right? But
dude, that's a game changer. One of the interviews I was doing with Tim, one of our guys had a huge transformation. That was like one of his biggest points that like kept him going. He was like, you forced everybody to, not forced, but one of the requirements of the private Facebook forum was to post a victory of the day. Mm-hmm. And he was like, you would call us out if we just made some bullshit up. Like some of the guys would be like, oh, I made it to the gym today. And I would be like, that's not like, you always make it to the gym.
Yeah.
Give me something deeper. And like, I would just pick at him, right? And he was like, that taught me to look at so many different things in my life that I'm actually doing well instead of constantly, because we're human, we're always going to focus on the bullshit, the negative thing, whatever we're not doing good enough, especially like entrepreneurs and stuff. Like we did that drill with, when he came by, I don't know why his name's blanking, unicorns.
Oh, Mark Fisher.
Mark Fisher, yeah.
Fucking that guy, unicorn. Mark Fisher, just so you know.
Bro, I'm sorry.
When people say unicorns, they think of Mark Fisher.
Unicorns and ninjas, that's what I always think of. But what he was saying, like he was like, all right, I want you guys to focus on like what are the great things you guys do here at Vigor Ground? And we're all like, every single one of us is like, man, we're really good at coaching. But if we did blah blah blah,
instantly what happened? Actually, this is a cool drill. Actually, you should do it with your team. It was like talk about some positive things that you do at your place. And what you'll notice is like we said it. We're like, man, I think we do a really great job with culture. And it was like, but ... And then we started talking about everything that we could improve, right? It was like, but we could improve this. And so automatically it's like our brains go to like the problem, right? But I mean, the problem, it's kind of like what's negative, right?
Right. And that's a ritual for me. So every single morning before I emails, work, anything after like I go on a walk and meditate and read and stuff, I write 3 things I'm grateful for and 1 victory of the day from the previous day. No matter what, like it's simple, but it makes such a big difference in my day.
Absolutely.
I start off on that foot.
What's the, man, I'm trying to, I was just writing this in the article, in the blog post that I'm putting up, but it's like, you can't, you can't take good actions feeling bad. Yeah. Right. And I think it is true. Like if you feel bad all the time and you feel bad about yourself and you beat yourself down, it's very difficult to have positive actions and outcomes. You know what I mean? But if you fuel that positivity, it's like, it's much different, right? If you wake up in the morning and go like, even from the previous day and you go like, what were your wins? And it's like, man, I knocked out that article. Man, you know what? I got, it was a really long day, but I still got my 30-minute training session in. Like, guess what? Like you're essentially writing down this, like, I can do it. Self-esteem.
Exactly.
I can do, it's like you're essentially, the whole self-fulfilling prophecy is like, you're going like, look, here's proof. And I think that's the kicker. Like, it's proof that I can do shit. Yeah. Because I think that what people end up doing a lot is, looking for proof that they can't do it. Yep. Right. So, I mean, when I do seminars in Slovenia, I'm always, sometimes the mindset is that way, and I remember specifically, like, multiple seminars in a row, I'm talking to one guy, same guy. And it's like, he's literally trying to convince me, it's like that why it won't work, why all these things won't work, and I stopped him. I said, man, listen, like, I can't help you, man. Like you're basically fighting tooth and nail for limitations. Yeah. And it's like, man, if that's the case, you can keep them, but I'd have you consider that there's another route, there's another story. And the thing is, I was like, hey, prove me wrong, right? Or prove yourself right. But like, do all this shit, but like really do it. You know what I mean? And like, just, give me the finger and go like, hey, Luca, I did this for fucking 60 days. All this work that you said, right? And nothing changed. Yeah. And it was just like the silence, right? Like, but I'm like, for real, like if you want to like,
because the actions associated with what he wants to get are difficult, scary, uncomfortable. So they'll fight for every limitation there is.
Absolutely. It's crazy. It's always that, right? Persecution, like.
So talk about parallels again, like, and I think this was funny because like, if you look at like Tony Robbins. I'm sure Gary Vee's like this a little bit too. Rob Dyrdek's a good example. Like that dude is the most successful from a business standpoint. So, skateboard ever, Jay-Z, all these like huge names in all these different industries. They all, like Keller Williams, they all go back down to these very simple fundamental things. Like what do they do when they wake up? They say what they're grateful for. They write a win. Like they do that stuff before they have to look at their to-do list or any limitations that could be today, right? They do these little tiny things and those are like their secrets. And I think that's the frustrating thing for people is they're like, all right, what is this guy's secret? And it's like these little tiny things. Once they do that, then they can start getting biz savvy
and doing those things exceptionally well, consistently. And like, when we went back, like actually as I'm looking at this list of, the foundations, but we were talking about nutritional foundations. But if you wrote a list of, success, like I would just say successful life foundations, it would start being all these parallels that these successful people have, which might be, like I said, whether it's like being grateful, being a go-giver, like every morning doing X, Y, Z, right? Like you'd start seeing the same things. Yeah. And it wouldn't, as soon as you start making it complex and, if you read the book of the Daily Rituals book, I forgot who wrote it, but Nate Green recommended it a long time ago. But it was like showing all these different artists and successful people's rituals, from Maya Angelou to Steve Jobs to you name it. And they were like kind of across the board,
Pretty similar?
No, it was some of them were very, very different, really fucking like weird shit, right? But once again, once you extracted these parallels, you saw patterns, right? Where even though, for instance, like working and aligning your day, like or separating yourself to dive in and do deep work, right? But they would just do it in different places in different ways. So on the surface, it would be like, oh wow, this shit's completely different. Yeah. But on a deeper level, you actually saw that it had like a lot of things that were similar. Right. You know what I mean? So it's like, man, if you like working in coffee shops with a lot of people around, or if you like to be completely fucking secluded for 3 hours.
Whatever gets you in that flow state, right?
Correct. Like, but at the end of the day, you're still doing your type of deep work.
So I think a good way to look at that too is this is what I tell people when I help teach them some of the like core 4 principles and just stuff like that. Is like, this is a game and here are the tools. You play the game how you want. Yeah. It's just like a video game. We all have our own characters. We all have our own weapons or tools or however you want to look at it. And we all have to use them how we need, right? So I think like core 4 before you hit the door works great for me. But then the second I can't do it before I hit the door, I'm like, fuck, I failed. I lost. And then I realized like, oh, well, if I do it before noon, I'm still in power. So like, what's the point, right? So if everybody can just look at like these fundamentals and then doing it in your own way, like you win.
It's like the Hunger Games, man. Choose your weapon.
Dude, 100%.
You know what I mean?
I like looking at things like this, man. It's
like I've loved the, Aubrey always talked about the analogy of the game. You know
and
what
that's
I mean?
why like side rant, Nerd Fitness is like, that dude is genius for that.
Because they do everything through games.
So like it just hooks people. It makes it way easier to follow along. But I think that's very powerful.
It is. I mean, you got to zoom out to change perspectives a lot of times when it comes to, things around whatever, man, business or fitness or and it's crazy that like after over a decade of doing this, I'm still just like really working hard to get better at the fundamentals. That any time you get away from and to be honest with you, like people that like when you look at people that are successful, I would guarantee that for that person, it doesn't take some crazy tactic. It maybe takes going back to more basic stuff and just mastering them even more. Yep. Right? Like shit like time management and productivity. I mean, I don't know how much I've improved, how much more, how can I extract an extra hour or 2 out of the day, not doing shit that's not moving my life anywhere or moving the business anywhere or moving my health anywhere and getting that down. But like, think about that. Like if you added another 30 minutes in a day, 7 days a week, that would help you move towards all the goals that you want in your life, right? That's 2.5 hours a week. That's 10 hours a month. Yeah. That's 120 hours a year. So what if you could add on top of what you're already doing and is moving you forward, another 120 hours a year of work towards everything you want in life, right? But then people look at that 30 minutes and go like, fuck it, 30 minutes, man. Like I need some complex, I need to dive in and do X, Y, Z. But man, those are the things that really make a big difference.
Well, and that's the whole point behind like the reason why we like look at creating space and meditation, right? Because it's time away from everything you need to be doing, but it allows you to be more productive during that time, so you get more work done. So it is almost like you speed through that time, right? Because you're stepping away, you're meditating, you're doing all that stuff. But again, like you said, like, and this is why the saying "back to the basics" is so famous.
It's actually, I was just reading Gary Deek's post today, and it was saying, I don't have time, like for nutrition part, and it's like, he asked the client, was like, all right, well, you know what, let's see where we can find an extra 25 minutes a week, because that's how much longer it would take you to add 5 minutes to make your lunch the night before for dinner, right? And it's like, well, let's just track everything you do for the next 2 weeks in the day. And the client goes like, nah, it's all right, I'll just make the fucking lunch. Right,
exactly.
Because deep down inside you start knowing, like, man, look, when you add the TV time that people do, like
scrolling through Facebook,
Netflix, I mean, it honestly, like, to me, it's still the thing that haunts me sometimes when I go like, man, where am I just losing all this time? Like, when I do the audit of the day, and I did it the other day, and I was just like, there's so much potential left, baby. And for me, it was like, even now that we have, Fit Bar Cafe open, it opens at 6:30. I'm here about, 7 a.m. most of the mornings now, because I love that, like, lean machine smoothie. So I come in, sit down at the cafe, get the lean machine, I start work. And by the time it's like 10:30, I already knocked out 3 hours of usually content and nobody's really bugging me. Right. But for instance, like, once again, why environments for me are so critical, right? So critical, because like I made that one shift, and it's like this one shift is really working for me. I probably eliminated, I don't know, an hour and a half of clutter out, that now, like, I'm just in this environment and I'm getting shit done. I got quality food. I got everything that I need. And, I would really, really, really constantly have you check your environments. Check your environment. Like, environment is like, are you eating off a bigger plate? Who are you hanging around? When you go for lunch with, at work, who are you around? Where are you having lunch? Is lunch in an area where it's, really cluttered, it's noisy, it's cafeteria food, your options are, vending machines, and iffy choices at best, you know what I mean? Like,
what's the music like? What's the view like?
All that shit, right?
So when we moved into this new place, I was like really adamant about getting a 2-bedroom. I was like, I want an office. And like, we get in there and I put like Kramer on the wall. I got ninja swords. I got like all these old vinyl records, like wooden desks. Like, and Shannon thinks it's funny. She's making fun of me because I'm like all like particular about what's on the desk. I have like this specific mug that says like, get shit done. I think you have that thing too.
Yep.
But I get so much more work done because I'm happy in there, right? And I changed my environment to suit my productivity level, essentially, right? So it's the same thing with you coming down here. There's not really anybody in here. You have your specific drink, music, space. Like, dude, it's key.
You know what's one thing that I don't think people think about that for me works really well, and being on vacation, because I plugged for the first 10 days, man. I plugged out quite a bit, so. And I was running around with Shard and Hugh. So
I could tell, like, mopeding, biking, cliff jumping.
I was not. I was
happy for you, man.
I was not working much at all, but I had a bunch of stuff that I did have to get done. Right. So what ended up happening is that I had these like really small windows of time, right? I mean, I knew, like, man, I'd be tired by the end of the day. I'm gonna have to go to sleep. So it's like, if it was in the morning, I'm like, fuck, we got to go in an hour and a half. So like now I have an hour and a half, and I gotta get this done. Yeah. Right? And I'd get the shit done. And I forgot what the name of the law is, but like, the task takes you as long as the time that you have to complete the task, right? And for me, I found this to be like true, to the T, right? You give me like,
setting up,
listen, you got to
blocks.
finish it. You got an hour. You got to finish this blog that you've been fucking working on for weeks, but you got an hour, man. Like, that's it. You got it. And like, I will knock that shit out, And so the question becomes, how can you, this is part of the reason why my days sometimes look like the way that they do, why we have a podcast right now, why I've already had like 3 meetings and all, today, because it's like, get down with a meeting. I got an hour and a half, and it's like, man, in that time, I got to get all this stuff done. Boom, I'm off to the next thing that I got, you know what I mean? So it's like also asking yourself, what commitments do you have to make to people? So do you actually restrict your time, but because you restrict your time, you get more shit done?
100%. And I think, like, I've seen a lot of guys, a couple of the guys that I get coached along with, I had the same issue. If I don't have a time block, a schedule, or anything, like, I'll get anxiety because it's unknown what is going to happen. Like, you don't know what's going on. You don't know when this is going to get done. You have no plan, no map, no blueprint. And it's the same reason why people get anxiety when they try to lose weight, because they walk into the gym and they don't know what the hell to do. They don't know what to eat. They don't know when to eat. They don't know how to train. It's the same thing with your schedule, right? So I'm huge on routines. Like I have my whiteboard and I do it every night. Like, okay, wake up at 5:30, go on a walk, do this, get done with this blog, shoot this. Like, because then I actually have, for me, it's important because then I can actually have some time with Shannon at night. But then in general, like you said, I'm way more productive because there's time blocks. And I know that from 10:30 to 11:30, no matter what, this is my only task. I don't have to worry about anything else. Instead of having a huge to-do list for today, right? And then you're just trying to tick shit off. Like that was a game changer for me. Like I still have a to-do list, but
so I mean we veered off a little bit, but we veered off. But these are good things, and but I'm going to come back to we got about two really good questions. I think you got one there too. This one is from Rok, but it's like his question was
wait, what was it?
Rok. So he's Slovenian.
Oh, okay.
Yes, that's a name, by the way.
It's funny how like we're talking and then like all of a sudden like
I'm throwing you off right here, man.
Instantly, dude. Oh, okay. I know exactly what you're talking about. It's spelt rock, right? R-O-K?
R-O-K, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I always say rock. That's fucking hilarious.
It's Rok. Work on it, bro. But his question was, what accountability systems have worked for you to keep clients on track with habits? And so I'm going to start here. You know that like once it's the question is fiending for an answer, like it's this, right? And I would say like, man, like it's just like anything else where you have to find one, what accountability is best for the client based on them, and their knowledge of themselves is way better than your knowledge of them, period. So I'm going to go back to these. And I did this on Jay Ferrugia's podcast. I think I brought these questions up, and I'm going to do them again. Also, for all our clients at Vigor, if our coaches are not asking you these questions at the beginning, call me because they're supposed to. You got to keep these mofos accountable since we're talking about accountability.
Right.
But it's the Super 7 readiness questions, which I think back in the day I got these from Dax Moy, when they're fantastic. But here's the thing: is like you have to create clarity around what even what people are looking for. What matters most to them. How they want to be kept accountable before you can explore, because they're going to give you an answer. And then you can, once again, it's like the coaching, asking them, like giving them choices of like, hey, well, I have some ideas. What do you think is best for you?
Right.
But here's the 7 questions. I'm going to run through them. Number 1 is, what do you think are the 5 most important ways that I can help you as a coach? I think that's insanely important to find out, what really they're looking for to get help from you as a coach. How will you actually measure that I'm helping you with these things? Like, so I'm asking you, like, what are you going to measure, versus like my belief system around, what is the result that you want, right? Number 3 is, what do you think would be the most powerful, most impactful thing that I could do for you during our coaching? It's another same thing, like getting insight, like what really matters to them. What do you think will happen if we don't coach together? That's, and honestly, that brings out pain points sometimes of like, hey, you've been going along a certain way. Like, man, what happens if you don't get help?
Yeah, that's a huge one to ask on day one, every single time.
What do you think would constitute poor coaching on my part? Very important. Man, like, I'm going to bring this up. What would constitute poor coaching on my part? And man, like,
they literally give you the answer on how to do your job.
Absolutely, but like as a coach, man, like you want to know what is not a good coaching to them. You know 100%. What I mean? And maybe that means that it might not be the right fit because you're a certain, you coach a certain type of way, which I don't think should be, because you should be, your skill set should be able to be malleable and pliable around that stuff, right? But number 6 here, this is like the accountability part, one that I think is very important. What do you think I should do if you fall behind in your pursuit of goals and or break our agreements? That's accountability. Like, how should I approach this? And you'll hear all types of answers. Like, man, I just want you to gently remind me and push me back. Or somebody might be like, hey, you know what? I mean, the blackmail diet type of thing. Okay, you know what? When I don't do it, like $100 goes to the KKK because I'd rather fucking die to give $100 to the KKK. Right. But man, that's holding you accountable. Yeah. Like, so, but there's different different ways of doing that, right?
So I think that's huge. And I agree, and I use the same thing. Like, one thing I will say, like, if he wants like specific systems to use as clients, like the easiest system goes back to like giving them like a handful of options. Like, so when I decide accountability with someone, I'm like, hey, would it help you if you emailed me your meal plan every night? Would it help you if I texted you in the morning? Would it help you if we did this? Would it help you if we did this? Then they have 5 options to choose what suits them best. Some people don't even want to hear from you that often. Like, they're cool, right?
No,
they don't need that much.
Agreed. And like, what I like to do is go, is that whole scenario saying like, hey, I'd love to share what some things that have been working, for our other clients.
Right.
But first, I'd like to hear what you think.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
exactly.
Because then it doesn't, you want people to think. You want people to explore their own kind of like life and minds and like, because some people never think about that, right? Because they've been programmed by the media that like what coaching is like you come in and the person tells you what to do and they give you the meal plan and like that's what it is, you know, and that's fucking not it. You know what I mean? Like that's a cop out, man. There's nothing to do with coaching.
I don't even give a meal plan. Well, I don't do meal plans, but I don't even give like a nutrition guidance or anything until like at least 1 to 2 weeks of us like going back and forth, troubleshooting like what they're doing. And like one thing about these questions too is like extract some of these questions and add them into your weekly questionnaire. Like, so I have a weekly update form essentially for clients to fill out. But in there, you'll notice like specific questions and assessment way, right? Like, so what went well, what didn't go well, what can you do better? What can I do to help you more? Like all these things, because let's say we ask all these questions and at day one, they're kind of like, oh, like I don't want to hurt his feelings. Like, I don't want to tell him that like this is too much or I don't want to, you know what I mean? Or they're just not open about it, right? Because a lot of people will want to be like the perfect, easy client. So they're just like, oh, no, I'm fine. Like, I just need to know what to do with training. But in reality, they need way more help than that. So regurgitating these questions more frequently than just at the beginning, I think is a game changer as well.
Yeah, because as people go through the process of being coached and they have more insights about themselves and their life and 100%. Stuff like that, it's like the book that you read. It's kind of like, rereading the book every year. It's like, even though it's the same book, it's like almost a different book because you have a different viewpoint on life. And like before we go over the last question, I wanted to give an example of, because this kind of ties in, right? The 4 steps, behaviors versus outcomes. And, we said step 1, show how behaviors lead to outcomes. Step 2, help clients understand what they can control. Step 3, identify some possible behaviors that lead to the outcome the client wants. And then step 4, choose one behavior and set it as a goal, right? Because this is a perfect example for this. But, a lot of people ask, like, I wanted to give actual examples of like what you might say, because people get lost here, right? But like just to get the framework around it, we gave an example of, the one where we say like, hey, well, I'd love to share like something. If you're open to it, I'd love to share what's worked with our other clients. But first, I'd like to hear your ideas, right? Yeah. So that step 1, you said, hey, you've said you'd like to lose X pounds or, insert whatever goal you want. This could be a business question, honestly. Tell me about what you think needs to happen to get there. I have some ideas, but I'd like for you to share first, right? Perfect example of that step 1 behavior. Number 2 is, now just to be clear, we can't set a timeline on this, right? And we were talking about like like weight loss, right? We can't set a timeline on this. Everybody's different, but what we can control is what you choose to eat and how much, right? Like, and this is for the coaches out there, and honestly for anybody that's getting a coach, because it's important to see, the communication. Like, there's a huge difference between what I'm saying right now and going like, well, I think you should do this, right? Like, I mean, that's a huge, like, basically no-no, right?
Well, and that's the thing too, is we could tell everybody listening to this, the top 5 things that 99% of people struggle with in their nutrition, right? But then you're going to find one client and you're going to be like, all right, so this is what we need to cut out right off the bat because Cody and Lucas said so. And then for that person, that's not what they needed. So asking them, hey, what do you think we can do to get you to that goal? Like you just said with number 1, they're going to give you a list of 5 things that are not that great in their diet that they could change. And you don't even have to do it. Then you just have to go, okay, I'm going to support you on that.
Correct.
Let me hold you accountable.
And that's straight up coactive coaching.
Yeah.
I'm going to finish off
so well.
This one is from the list of the possible behaviors. It looks like, and whatever they answer, but let's it's portion control. Like, it looks like portion control is an important part of your losing weight. Would you like to start working on some basic portion control as a first step together, right? And remember, then they yes, I would, right? Like, their choice, autonomy, right? Like, it's on them. And number 4 here would be, what seems easiest? Using plate size. Okay, cool. Let's start with that. This week, let's work with a smaller plate size, right? And so you can see how those 4 questions, like how you'd work with a client where really they're making choices, you're getting insight. It's kind of like guidance and support, like backing off, really seeing, them making decisions and choices. And for anybody that's listening that, I don't know, maybe you're in a place of, I don't know, shit, you got marketing decisions to make. Same thing. Like, you know what I mean? Where like, I love coaching people to where I make them better. It's not like, okay, I'm just waiting for the answer. Like, it's cool. Like, I'll say like, would you like to hear what I would do in this scenario? But first, let me hear from you. Like, let me hear like, what are some things that you're thinking? well, man, I was going to do what, and they'll have an idea that I didn't even think of because I don't know them enough. I don't know their business, in depth, right? So think about some of those things that we talked about, because I think they're like, it's such a foundational thing that's everything should be built on.
Don't skip over it, especially like for the trainers who are like I know one thing I struggled with is I love geeking out on like the science behind training and nutrition, and I let that influence my decisions on a client. When in reality, they were far from that. I might be at that point of like this nutritional science, but they're not, right? So if you can bring it back for them and just remember, like, you should still study all this stuff, but you don't need to reflect that right on the client. At
the end of the day, it ends up being the curse of knowledge.
Yeah.
Right. And like the curse of knowledge is I keep bringing this up. Let's say, once again, like my geekiness level is fucking like 17 out of 10. Right. So, but let's say you're like, okay, I'm gonna bring this down, right? I know I have to talk to the client at a level, be like, because I study this so much, I'm gonna bring it down. So people bring it down to a 6, thinking 6 is like they're gonna that's
they need
it.
A 2.
But they need to be at a 2.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, so you're still, and I marketing is the same way.
Yeah,
marketing is the same way, man. Like I'm completely redoing like the Vigor marketing for the new website based on this. Based on like, man, I take the curse of knowledge out. Because once again, to loop it around, I want us to help like the 80%, that are not being helped because the communication is shitty in marketing, right? The people that are scared to come into the gym because they think it's, it might like hurt them, or there's tons of judgment and things like that, man. Like for real, like, I mean, I know we'll get, it's like just off of word of mouth and people communicating. Like we'll get the people that are fit and want to get fitter.
Yeah.
But it's like, how do we communicate better? And I think the curse of knowledge is one of them. And I think that goes both for marketing and communication with clients at the end of the day, period. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So let me see where we're at. Oh man, shit. Well, we got one last question. Fuck it, we'll go with it because that's how we do. But that's John Russin, and his question was how to eat for recovery while not getting fat from caloric and carbohydrate overload. Well, I'll give you my philosophy on this one. I always really like the simple approach of, and I mean, I still live like this essentially, is like the anytime post-workout meals.
Yeah. When you don't have to be in a huge surplus to just recover.
No.
Right. Obviously, if your goal is to get massive, you need to be in a surplus. But I don't even a lot of stuff saying now too is like, if you go in a huge surplus, like we used to do back in the day to get big, you're really just going to gain body fat. You're going to have shitty digestion. It's unhealthy. It's probably not good on your joints. So like, I would say like make it a very small surplus, or just keep your calories at maintenance. You're going to recover fine, especially if, knowing him, I'm like, I know he's doing everything from a movement standpoint to make sure that he's recovering properly. But I don't know.
Well, the thing is, you go back to foundations, man. Like I say, like, look, I don't like, even if you're a caloric deficit, like, man, you get your sleep right.
Yeah.
You're not gonna have you're not gonna have huge issues with it. I do think that just off of the people that we're training, like for instance, Matt Fields, former pro athlete, Major League Baseball, big like guys like 6'5", and I don't know where he's at right now, probably 255. He's dropped like 30 pounds right now. But man, like his problem is like under eating, right?
Yeah.
So you'll see that a lot. When guys start training, they want to lose weight or training hard and like really, but like I'm talking about like really under eating.
Yeah.
1,000, 1,500 calories too little.
Yeah.
Because his maintenance is like 3,000 calories a day. He's losing weight. Like a lot of muscle mass. Like he's really active and so on and so forth. So it's like these basics. Like I think sleep, hydration, and man, at least being close to maintenance.
Yeah.
Right. But I do I think the concept of post-workout anytime meals for a lot of people is pretty simple.
Yeah, it works great.
Where it's kind of like, hey, look, protein, veggies, fruit, maybe a little starch too. Like I'm cool with it, but anytime meal. But then post-workout meal is like where you go, protein, veggies, and then load up on some quality smarter carbs and starches and stuff. And like this, where I love the PN, where you like show somebody a plate and it's like, see this plate? Shit should look like this.
Yeah.
With athletes, that's actually works really well, because it's like, man, I'd give them like a 4x6 card with the picture on it, and they're like, looks about right.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
exactly,
Like for real, like, and you got that visual, and you're like, this is about right, and like I said, we're staying away from the whole, I would say, counting calories and the macros and stuff like that, because that might be a big jump for some people. But it's like, man, where you're like, look, this is kind of how your play should look like, when you're not training. This is how when it looks like when you are training.
I think if you optimize sleep and then optimize muscle protein synthesis, so like essentially getting 3 to 5 meals a day, every meal has protein, get 2 to 4 servings of veggies a day, 1 serving of fruit, fats in pretty much all your meals at a low dose, and then just put carbs pre and post workout, or have less carbs pre and then more carbs post. I think that kind of depends on the person. Some people kind of bonk, whereas I thrive on a little bit of carbs before I train versus after. I don't really care as much. So I think you got to play with those things. But I really like, the more and more I dig into, like, have you ever read Deep Nutrition? It's a thick ass book, but I've been digging into that, Wired to Eat, all these like ancestral style diets. The more and more of these studies that come out, like the more I realize that your maintenance calories can probably be a lot higher than you think if you stick to more natural and unprocessed foods. And I truly believe that if you start cutting out the inflammatory food, you cut out a lot of the processed stuff that you really don't even know how to pronounce, all those things, your gut health is just going to be better.
Man, I went on vacation again, lost weight. It's funny, Charlotte lost weight. She's like, man, it's like the lightest I've ever been.
Because the food is so much less processed.
And we were, we were doing daily desserts and fucking gelato diet type.
I thought you were a food blogger when you were over there.
Man,
your
Insta
story
me
was on point.
I know. I might have to start another fucking like site on that. But that was the thing though. Like majority of the food that we ate was like whole unprocessed, and we're going to the market every day. Like we went on this whole fig tip, it's like fucking figs every day, taking dumps like in nobody business, you know what I mean? Like, but it was like tons of veggies, tons of fruit, and eggs in Slovenia, like, man, there's still feathers on the fucking egg, like when you take them out the carton. So it is like we ate that, and then it was like, some actually, local desserts and gelato, obviously, and stuff like that. But still, I think that this is kind of exactly what you're saying. It's like, man, when you introduce like whole unprocessed foods, and that's like the majority. And let's say we were 75, 25, 80, 20. Yeah. But it's still like, and back to like we were moving around a lot, like we're just walking around a lot.
But the thing is too, is you move around a lot here. Yeah. And I guarantee you didn't eat less when you're over there.
No, probably not.
So if we had, and if we had the ingredients like they do there in more abundance, I should say, because we have them over here, and that's but people have to go out of their way a little bit.
Yeah, harder to get a little bit. Yeah.
And I truly like the effect that real nutrients have on your body for recovery, going back to his question, through the roof. Like I guarantee you can build more muscle, burn more fat, feel better, think better, have more memory. All these things are
just because people are deficient. Yeah. Like it's just, we look at like what are all these deficiencies that people have, and like if you add some of these foundational things back again, right, you're fixing a lot of that.
Well, and that's why the ancestors didn't need supplements, didn't need medicine and all these vitamins and stuff, because they got it. A lot of them ate the whole fucking animal too. Like there was this part she was talking about the Indians, and they ate the Native Americans, and they would have these competitions where they would take out the intestine of a bison, and then they would get on each side and they would eat until they met, and whoever ate the most.
Man, this is very romantic.
Up, right? But
it's very romantic right now.
That's what he said. What's that movie with the dogs eating the spaghetti? But what she was saying is like, the Native Americans let us know that the reason they did this is because all of the grass that the bison ate is now fermented. So we're getting tons of probiotics. Our gut health is better, all this stuff. And it's like, oh shit, I thought you guys were just like savages eating intestine. But no, there's purpose. They made a game out of it, but there's purpose behind it, all right? It's the same reason why like a lot of old Asian cultures, they eat the tongue, the liver, like all these different things. Like, I don't know. It says a lot about
and the thing is like the people, all that time ago, it was still like people were like, man, when I eat this, my stomach feels better. When I eat that mushroom, I get fucking sick. Yeah. But it's great for knocking down temperature. When I do, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. And so I think that like there is this whole, when you break it down, there's such a small percentage of like people that really need to worry about these extreme, kind of like specialty things. And man, to this day, dude, I played sports with some of the highest level athletes in the world, and I can't tell you how shitty their diet was.
Oh, it's crazy,
and it's like, and then people would like consult them on like what they needed to do, and I'm just like, man, fuck that. Like they just need to like eat real quality food and get more sleep, and not versus, I don't know, you got to add BCAAs, which I just saw a study that BCAAs like actually don't do shit. Yeah. From in a as a supplement in some form, but that's why like everybody's like, man, but what about this? But what should I get this? And I'm like, man, don't worry about that. Like, look at your regular food, you know? So,
well, and so many people don't know what it feels like to thrive, right? And I think that's the biggest issue, right? So I think it's very powerful for everybody to go through some form of elimination diet, even at the micro level where you're just cutting out processed foods or you're just cutting out sugar or whatever, so you can fill your body. Because a lot of people we get in here, like, though joint health is a good example of this, because significant differences in your joint health if you eat like this. We'll say, oh, like, you know, my joints are hurting, my metabolism's slower, it's just hard for me to keep weight off, but I'm getting old. Like, that's all it is. I'm like, no, that has nothing to do with it, right? Like, it has everything to do with, or even just sitting down a lot. Like, okay, I get it, but it has everything to do with, like, the ingredients and the fuel you're putting in your body.
I think something like an elimination diet, I think the awareness is like, is really kind of like, it's teaching the person, like, holy shit, like, this is how much better I can feel taking some stuff out. Now, obviously, it's like, you know, we can both agree on it'll be tough to stay on something like that. But just the contrast and awareness can be such a punch in the face that you were like, shit, I really should pay attention to what I'm eating and how I'm eating it. That
goes back to like tying the pain to it, right? Like, is it worth it? Because man, because I just went through a elimination diet and I was like, because I was trying to get rid of my eczema, and for me that's the pain. Like, I hate having like a rash on my arm. Like, it's embarrassing. Like, it itches. Like, I don't like buying cream for it and shit. So I was like, all right, it's most likely like dairy or gluten or something, right? I cut out all this stuff. None of it. It was eggs.
It was eggs?
Cut out whole eggs. I can eat egg whites every time. And then I like brought them back in.
I feel bad for you,
dude,
my
it's
friend.
horrible. I brought them back in, had some scrambled eggs, instantly started breaking out. Indigestion, gas. So I'm like, now here's the thing with me is like, if grandma's making like a special day, I'm eating it. I don't care.
Listen, save the yolks because I'm eating all that shit, man.
But the point is like, it's awareness, right? Like, that is the last thing I would have thought, but it's probably for me overdoing them. I had egg scrambles every single day because eggs build muscle, man. Like, I was like down in like 4 to 6 eggs a day.
You know what? With that said, I can't not bring this up, you know, because I'm looking at Facebook and it's just like people that I know, it's like, that's it. I'm done with meat. I watched What's the Health, and I'm just like,
I was cringing. Did you watch it?
I watched about 40 minutes of it, and I was just like, I can't watch this shit anymore,
bro.
And you know, just a point. Like number one, I need to pull up like Berardi wrote something really well. Really
I talked
good
about that on ours. Like, what he said was perfect, and then it had like the motion. And this is what I think about it.
Yeah, it's just jerking off motion. But because look, you know, with studies, like if you want to make a point, you can find something to support it
on anything.
But without the inclusion of all the data, you know, it's complete bullshit. And that's pretty much, you know, what, like, you see a lot of these health documentaries out. Like, honestly, I think that he said there's one that is really good that takes into account, you know, all the studies and I'm going to say all the studies, but a lot of the studies. But what's the health? I mean, like, look, man, when
they're not nutrition scientists, they're documentary, whatever that's called.
They're basically, they shoot documentaries, and it's like, this is the viewpoint that we're going to take. Let's find the data to support it, and that's that. And like, while there's points there, you know, that are made in the documentary that I would agree with, you know, like the big organizations, like, you know, don't have the best, I would say, nutritional recommendations and stuff, and morals, sure. But when you start telling me that, like, you know, like an egg is like the same as smoking 5 cigarettes.
Oh my God, bro.
I mean, I'll tell you, like, I did my blood work, you know, not long ago. It's pretty fucking fantastic. Like, every single thing that they say don't eat, I eat it.
Eggs are great for your blood work, dude. So one of the things that I noticed while watching it, and I actually pulled up and looked into, every single time he said meat in a negative way, he actually said processed meat. So every study that he's citing or backing up was based off of like packaged deli meat in like canned, specific, like unhealthy, overly processed food, right?
Processed food,
stuffed with, or like they did a study on chicken, and he was saying like chicken kills you and all this stuff because they pump so much like sodium oxide in and shit. But then he like really quickly he said like, we went to local fast food restaurants and family restaurants to get our data, blah blah blah, and then kept going. It's like, well, you go to McDonald's for your chicken source, like obviously that's going to be shit.
I mean, once again, right? I mean, I bring it up because, you know, if you watched it, hey, do your due diligence, do the research, you know, speak to the, I would say the experts that really do all the studies and stuff like that. Like, go to sources, like I said, like Alan Aragon and Precision Nutrition and, you know, Eric Helms. We could go on and on about like who, but, you know, is that will basically show like, look at this viewpoint, you know, because I see what's happening is like, people are like, man, I took out all meat and like I feel way better. And it's like, well, you probably took out a lot of processed food, so obviously you start feeling better. But that doesn't mean that, you know, like that what they're saying is fucking right on point.
Well,
you know?
and Jay Ferrugia talked about that too. He did a vegetarian diet and he said he felt great for a while, but then he had to move back to it. But it taught him a lot about how to be like 75% plant-based, which I think is smart. But there's so many benefits to having meat, from vitamins and minerals to creatine to protein to all these different things that your body can thrive on, that I think it's crucial.
Yeah. So I mean, I hope at least if nothing else that we poke holes in it and tell you to go do due diligence rather than going deeper into that. I felt like I needed to bring it up because it's like in my stream too much and I got annoyed by it.
Dude, it's crazy. One of the funniest things about it too is like you said, he calls those big organizations. So he calls the organization, the lady's like a receptionist, and he's like, how come you have blah, blah, blah on your menu for food recommendations? And she's like, excuse me? And he says it again. She's like, I don't know. And then it cuts the scene. He's like, another corporation with no answers to give us. And I'm like, she's a receptionist. What the fuck do you want her to do?
This lady's like, look, man, this is my 9th hour shift. I'm fucking trying to get out of here.
Right.
I don't know what you're talking about. Like I barely, you know, I can barely get 2 meals a day. Shit. But yeah, I mean, we're kind of, man, we're definitely running out of time on this one. Hey, I mean, appreciate the questions. Like I said, we'll be doing these more regularly because then we can dig deep, as you guys can see. Before we leave, man, like we are 5 weeks out right now of the Vigor Ground Fitness and Business Summit. Spaces are going, but obviously we still got spots. The price is going to go up in about 2.5 weeks. Again, so man, do not I would say waste the opportunity to get in right now and get the full 3 days. So there's the 1 day that's the hands-on at Vigor Ground, and then there's 2 days at the beautiful Hyatt on Lake Washington. VigorGroundSummit.com. Go to VigorGroundSummit.com. Got all the details there. But man, don't miss out. Like if you look at the lineup right now, it is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, it's straight impossible. Up. It really is, and it really is absolutely ridiculous. And man, we're going to have a blast, so make sure that you sign up. If you live in Seattle and you're not there, and I ever hear you telling me about how there's no great seminars and opportunities, and like, man, I will roundhouse kick you, for real. Like, I will roundhouse double kick you and, go teching on you, for real. But with that said, Coach Luca, Coach Cody, we're out of here. Love and appreciate you guys. Peace.